This is like why Play Life Differently I think could be so helpful to people. Like I meant it. Like it's not about being a YouTuber. Like I could care less. I mean,
you just riffed for an hour authentically from the heart on practice principles that you've been doing for 15 years. So it's like, it's innate at this point.
Yeah.
Like you weren't even thinking, you were just going.
And true to successful people, if they've been materialistic or money driven, they're unhappy. You've heard of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like multimillionaires, money doesn't make them happy, right? And so what I've found is like, I found my happiness first and my successes come second. All right, guys, welcome back to Play Life Differently. First, I want to say thank you to everybody that's reached out, text, called, emailed, sent me messages. It's been truly humbling in such a short period of time, having launched this about a month ago. I just want you to let you know, you know how grateful I am with all the positive responses that y'all have given me. And in fact, I was at a conference like 2 weeks ago, and so many people came up to me and said, "Oh, I saw your post, I saw your reels, I saw the podcast." Just positive remarks around. So much more than I had even anticipated in such a short time. So thank you for all of that. And I hope you continue to tune in and subscribe to the YouTube channel and learn a lot more. But I also wanted to give some perspective on why I'm doing this. I shared it a little bit last time, but the reality is, like, you know, I'm 48. I run a couple different businesses. I don't need to do a YouTube channel, YouTube podcast, except for the fact that over the last number of years, the conversations that I've had with individuals, so the deep conversations like we talked about in the last episode was, you know, pretty astounding in terms of just what we talk about just in my circle of friends. And, you know, I thought there's some really relevant information, and I would love to just impact more people. I just, that's the purpose, is just if there's one or two or three people that tune in, get a couple pieces of advice, a few nuggets here or there that resonates, then, you know, I feel like I've done my part to help people just kind of navigate the craziness of this world. There's so much that goes on, and I think days go by, weeks, months, years go by, and I've gotten a ton of fulfillment in my life with the people around me, living intentionally and being totally present. The things that we'll talk about on this podcast, true to the mantra of playing life differently, will hopefully help some of you tune into those things, be more present, and have a life that's a lot more fulfilling. So thank you again for all the support and the reach outs the last couple of weeks. There's more to come. So tune in, subscribe, and we'll keep going. So for today's topics of discussion, there are three basic things that I wanted to cover. One is opportunity. What does it look like? How do you recognize it? What do opportunities really mean? A lot of you might feel like, you know, I don't have those in front of me. So we'll talk about that. The second is just challenges, challenging yourself, challenging others. And what does that mean on a deeper level? And then the third is, people often say, oh, you know, when someone has success, they might attribute it to luck, right? So there's just a handful of basic kind of types of luck, and so we'll talk about those as well. So that's it. So opportunity, challenges, and growing, and then types of luck. So that's where we're headed for today. So opportunity, let's start with that. You know, opportunity is kind of interesting. Oftentimes, you know, even in small ways, opportunities might come up, right? It might be, you know, an offer to go to an event with some friends. It might be a business opportunity. It might be, you know, opportunity to engage in a new relationship, work, personal, or otherwise. And so I think what's interesting about it, though, is in my experience, right, it's a little bit like the red car experience, right? So if somebody tells you about a car on the road and you're like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, and then they describe the car and like, oh yeah, I guess I've seen that type of car, and then next time you're driving, you see that car everywhere, right? And so it's really just about some awareness and knowing what you're looking for, and that's opportunity. So opportunity shows up in the smallest of places, and most oftentimes the biggest opportunities may seem small at first. The big opportunities that get presented often have a lot of challenges involved in them. Like the smallest opportunities, I think, we just need to have some awareness of what that looks like. You know, and I've got some examples for that. You know, I mean, the first one is the change in my career. I was a caddy. 12 years at Ivano, put myself through high school, college doing that. And then, you know, I got a master's in physical therapy from Marquette, Went and did that, got a job, passed boards, and got a job as a physical therapist. And I thought that was the path that I wanted at the time. But I was still caddying on the weekends. Here we are. I'm on a Saturday in the summer, and my wife at the time is pregnant with our first. And the gentleman I'm caddying for, who became a mentor, just kind of looked at me. He's like, how are things going? Like, I'm like, great. I'm graduated. I'm a therapist, expecting my first. And he's like, oh, that's fantastic. And then he jokingly, but with a lot of truth to it, he says, well, being a PT can't be that good. You're still caddying on the weekends. That piqued my interest, being, someone that works hard, try being a provider. So that kicked off the conversation. And then what we found, I went through a couple of meetings with him, some more conversations. And then about 9 months later, I switched careers. So I left behind a stable salary with a newborn that, she was born in August, and made the switch in April. First, I was born in August. I changed careers to 100% build your business, commission-based industry with a ton of risk on the table. But it was the opportunity for something different than what I thought I would get with a stable income. There was a lot of hard discussions at the time, but I had faith. This mentor had faith in me. It was not easy. I could share tons of stories over the first 7 to 10 years of my career, how hard it was financially, emotionally, mentally. But that was the first opportunity, right? It just came from that one comment, right? Can't be doing that well if you're caddying on the weekends to make some extra money, right? What I knew at that point was I did not want to be in my 40s, still caddying on the weekends for some extra cash. That was the 100% that I knew. Everything else that I've learned in the industry and time, like I had no idea what I didn't know at that point. But I just knew that I didn't want to be caddying on the weekends or work a second job. So, that's one opportunity. And that's a big one. That changed the trajectory of my life. And I'm forever grateful to that mentor. Once a year, for sure. It's usually much more often than that. But once a year, I send him a very heartfelt either note, or we go to dinner and I spend, a couple of minutes just saying, thank you for believing in me, putting your faith in me, and dealing with all the mental crap that I had for so long as I continue to build the business. So opportunity, you never know how small some seemingly very, very small comment can change the course of your life. So what does that look like in like other things like that maybe in your life? So it's kind of interesting. There's been over my time, like I'll go back to maybe COVID 2020. We're all stuck in our houses. We're not doing much at that time. Entertainment, TV, movies, social media, all that stuff. And I was scrolling through Facebook and there was this ad for Epic Golf Club on Facebook. Now, mind you, I'd already joined Ivanhoe, was already, successful in my career to an extent. And I saw this ad. So I hit the submission form. I get a phone call. I ended up having an hour and a half conversation with Epic and went through the interview process. There wasn't a ton of travel going on in 2020. So here I am, September, October of 2020, engaging in the opportunity to join Epic, paid my initiation fee and join, but the world shut down. The world's not even traveling, right? And I'm joining a travel golf concierge club. Like, that kind of seems ludicrous, right? But here's my thought process when I had that discussion, that interview is, the kids were getting closer to being on their own, high schoolish, they're spending more time with friends, they're busier. My time in my life seems to be freeing up a little bit, or at least I thought it would be. And so I was like, I'm going, I'm doing pretty well. I could probably afford to go on one or two golf trips a year to, I love golf, courses that I would love to play. And so I think I'm going to take the chance. So I text my buddy and I say, hey, like, you're going to think I'm an idiot. Like, there's literally the text. You could probably find it somewhere, but I'm like, you're totally going to think I'm an idiot, but I just joined a travel golf club. He texted me because like, yeah, I think you're an idiot. But here's why I went with that opportunity, right? At the time, we were also just launching E9, right? So we had just found a space. We just signed a lease like a month before. So we knew we were building out this new concept. We had no idea if it would have any stickiness and if it would go. And here we are 5 years later, and it's going well and it's profitable. And so I told him, I'm like, wouldn't it be so cool 20 years from now if we had a bunch of E9s all over the country? We've got friends from Epic Golf Club, right, that love to play golf. They're successful people. Maybe they'd want to join E9 if it's in Detroit or, Minneapolis or Indianapolis or Scottsdale. Or like, I didn't know, right? I had no idea, no formulated specific plan for that, but I joined Epic because I wanted to travel and play golf. I thought I'd have more time to do so. I thought, there'd be some synergies with some of the people that we might meet through Epic. Now, mind you, I hadn't met a soul yet at Epic. I just literally joined. What's interesting, that little observation or being open-minded, I guess, is what opportunities come down to something that could be. What's the possibility, right? Got me to a place where now 5 years later, I've got a lot of friends in Epic all over the country, and just built really great relationships by taking the opportunity to do something, just what seems like a little crazy at the time, turned into something where I've got some really good friends now all over the country that are successful, love golf, and share, like-minded ideas. So that's kind of the opportunity, right? And I'll give another one, which I think is probably the most dear to me. So after I joined Epic, I had an extra spot to go with me to play Olympic Club, to play a top 100 course out in San Francisco. So I had previously just met Brian Floriani. I hadn't known him very, very long, and he's the founder of Bernie's Book Bank. And Brian was trying to go national with his charity. And I said, why don't you come with me to this Epic event out in San Francisco? There's some successful people there. Maybe there's someone you'll meet, So I did it out of wanting to help Brian more than anything. We get to San Francisco. He picks me up early, like 4 a.m. We fly out. We get there, 9 a.m. We go to the Pier 49 or 39, whatever it is. And then we, meet up at a bar, waiting for the other guys to get there. And I said, Brian, so you got to tell me more about this charity, Bernie's Book Bank. And so he tells me the story. He tells me about his dad. He tells me how he started out of his garage, and the passion and commitment he has is so contagious. And I remember sitting at the bar. I can picture it over a beer, like I could see it in my mind right now. And I'm just like, holy cow, giving books to the underserved in cities it's such a good mission. And here's why it is for me. I've got a master's degree in physical therapy. I've got close to a master's and PhD in financial planning. And so I have read so many things, right? And those are academic fields, right? And content. And then outside of that, I read a lot of other entrepreneurial books, personal growth books. I thought a couple years ago, I'm like, gosh, the person I am today, I can directly attribute to my ability to read and because I have access to material to read. That dawned on me in that moment at the bar with Brian. And I looked at Brian and was like, I'm in. Like, what do you need? How can I help? Right. And what's funny about that is the opportunity was selfless. It was to help Brian meet other folks to hopefully expand the charity, but I didn't even really know the charity that well at that point. And so here I am with Brian, and it dawns on me that this is an incredible mission for the kids in the US that don't have books, that they can change their life story if they have the ability to read and have access to books. It's true to me. Now, granted, I had books growing up, but like everything I've become in my adult life is because I read. I read a lot. So that's kind of where that little success has come from, is like just the opportunity to invite someone along for the ride. Here we are now, a couple years later after that, and Brian came to me about a year ago and asked me to co-chair their annual golf event, to spread the word and get more people involved. I was humbled by the ask. I willingly took that on, and it was a successful event this year. We hit the goal, and all of the things that needed to happen, we would consider it a success. And so then what's come of that is interesting, being helpful with my time, right, to a charity that I'm passionate about. It's my charity, number one charity. Brian, in return, has made incredible introductions for me because he thinks I've got something to share. He thinks I've got value to give. I'm not saying it to brag. I'm just saying, when you put forward yourself for others to help them in the smallest opportunity, then more opportunities come back. Opportunity is really about being able to see it in front of you. And that's the hardest part. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like, how do you see it? And then, taking small steps to see it through. Those are pretty big in my mind's eye, like in my history, some of the biggest opportunities that have changed the course of my life. So my career, my network and love for golf with Epic, and then my passion for philanthropy with Brian and Bernie's Book Bank. So like, when I say I'm happy and I'm fulfilled, it's because of those three opportunities, like hands down, right? And so I want to pivot a little bit and talk about like, what do opportunities look like? How do you even know if they are in front of you? And I think for me, it comes with two things. One, an open mind, and then two, like a creative mind. The open mind, I think, is pretty obvious, right? It's opportunity presents itself and you say, okay, I'll listen. I'll hear what it's about, right? And you just open your mind to the conversation or to the opportunity. You're not closed-minded, right? You don't think you can't. You don't think it doesn't work. You can't, like all the negative statements, like the excuses that we give ourselves to not get engaged. I try to avoid those at all cost, right? Everything's on the table, always on the table, but let's just talk about it and dig in. So open-mindedness. And the second piece is like creativity. So what I mean by that is like, if you take this opportunity, what could it be? What are the outcomes? What's the work that's going to be involved with it? But then what are the outcomes? I mean, the thing about like Bernie's book bank, no idea. Like when I said I'm all in, Brian, what help do you need? We created a 10K club, if you will, right? 10,000 hours, 10,000 words, 10,000 books, whatever it is, $10,000 of donations from each person each year. So like whatever it is, like what's the outcome and how can I help? And so the creativity came from, Brian, how can I help in a way that you already don't have access to, right? So like I'm in, but let's talk about what my particular skill sets or my network or whatever it is can help. And so we spent time talking about that. And I think Brian would tell you that that's been pretty true and pretty consistent with the two of us. And, so the creativity that has led to being actively and engaged with it. And then Brian has in turn asked how he could help because he's an open-minded person as well. He's a very creative person. He thinks very big, right? And so what's interesting is open-mindedness, creativity, and thinking big. Like think about what's possible. Like big isn't necessarily like sexy and glamorous, right? And money per se, but it's just like, what are the possibilities? That's what I mean by thinking big. Like how big can you get? How many new decisions do you get? How many new opportunities do you get? And so we have those things in common. And so with that, Brian has graciously made other introductions to help me. So I think opportunity begins with being open-minded and being creative. And they're small things. They're so hard to recognize. And here's the funny thing. I'm going to sum up, opportunity a little bit. Opportunity happens. It's hard to see. It's hard to get started, I should say, with opportunity, right? When you think about, I don't get opportunities. Like they don't come my way. I think when you get started, you almost have to go seek out opportunity, right? You have to put yourself out there. You have to know who you are. You have to get pretty close to understanding, what you're trying to achieve. You talk about writing goals and all these other things, but you do have to kind of put yourself out there first. I put myself out there when I changed careers. I got asked the question, but then I was like, hey, like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Right. I asked the question back. Like, what does that mean? Right. And then the opportunity unfolded. Or Epic, right? I reached out, I saw an ad and I reached out to fill out the form, right? I put myself out there knowing full well that it's probably going to cost me something, but I want to know more. I want to see if this is the opportunity. I don't know what it means, so tell me more. And then with Brian and Bernie's, like, tell me more about Bernie's. I asked the question. I put myself out there. And then he told me, and I'm like, hey, it resonated very deeply to my core, my soul. And I said, okay, great. Now I'm going to put myself out there again. How can I help? How can I help you? Right. And so I think to begin to see opportunities, you have to put yourself out there. You have to put yourself out there in the opportunity that shows up, the event, whatever it might be, and then be open-minded and creative and just continue to go deep with it. And you might not be successful at that first opportunity. Like, here's the thing about opportunities. Like, not everyone works. Not every opportunity is a home run. And some of them take forever. They're marathons. A lot of them are marathons, but it's being consistent. And I've talked last time about like, you got to be consistent. Persistently patient is the phrase I use all the time, right? So I am persistently patient, whether it's a client that I'm working with, or if I'm playing on the golf course, persistently patient, waiting for my game to come back to me, whatever it is. So, so some of these opportunities take forever and they're a marathon, not a sprint. You got to put yourself out there first to see it, right? And then what's interesting is maybe some opportunities won't be successful, but some will. And they might be small wins in terms of that success. You have to recognize the wins and the losses, but you keep putting yourself out there. And it's true to that red car theory, right? So the more you put yourself out there and take a little bit of risk with some opportunities, the more you start seeing more opportunities, right? So like, you don't know what you don't know, right? But it's like any expert in their field, right? When they first start in their career, they're using textbooks, they're using resources, right? To identify issues, problems, things that they're working on, right? So it's kind of like, I like, this is kind of a funny story, but I think the analogy will, take home the point. So, number of years ago, I started, I was doing P90X, I was working out pretty hard, and I ended up getting shingles, right? Like, I didn't know it, but I had like these little red dots, like, actually, I think it was on this side, and that were showing up on my forehead. And I just thought like spider bites, like, I had no idea, right? So, I have all these, they start getting, and then like 2 days later, they're getting like bigger and bigger, and it's going across the top of my forehead. I get to my brother's graduating medical school, and so I get there, and his fiance's like, Marty, like, that's not like bug bites or spider bites. Like, I think you have shingles. So I left his graduation, went to the ER, and here's the point of the story, right? So I walk in, and the doctor pulls back the curtain, and he's probably 12 feet from me. He's not on top of me examining the red spots, right? And he looks at me and he's like, what are you in for? And I was like, well, I've got these red spots. Like, I don't know what it is. And he just looks at me, he's like, you have shingles. Now, this is a doctor from 12 feet away he just called it, right? And then, of course, they did the tests and confirmed and all that, and it was shingles. And my point to that is that opportunities are like that doctor, right? The more you come across them, the more you put yourself out there, the more you have success with opportunities and take some risks. Like, you get really good at diagnosing if it's the right opportunity. It's a muscle you got to flex. You got to work on it. For people that say like, well, I never get the opportunities, you're probably not looking because they're all around you. And so start looking, start putting yourself out there, start looking, and you'll find that as you start looking and you start taking action on some of those opportunities, you will see more and more will come your way. And it's just the funny thing, right? Like it's like the book, The Secret, right? That was it's pretty well known, right? What your mind thinks about, it gravitates towards, and then your actions gravitate toward that. So if you're looking for opportunities, you'll find them. Now you have to use some discretion on which ones you take on, and if you're unsuccessful at one, it doesn't mean you stop looking for opportunities. You just go find a different one. But that's key with opportunities. The more you take them on, the more you see, the more you find, the more success you have. And I think I talked about this last time too. Like you've got this balance of when you try something new and you take a risk. If you've got 10 things that you're taking risks on, you might suck at all of them. You might not be successful at all of them. Maybe you win 1 out of 10, right? But if you keep doing that, then you're going to win 3 out of 10. Then you're going to win 5 out of 10. Then you're going to win 7 out of 10. And you're never going to win all of them, right? But because you have the at-bats, you've taken the opportunity, you've put yourself out there, over time your successes build and they compound. And your ability to get really good at seeing the right opportunities for you gets a lot easier. So the second thing I want to talk about is challenging yourself and others to be better, to do better, to be growth-minded, to become the best version of yourself. So Play Life Differently is all about discovering yourself, discovering